everybody! We've got another educational video for you today. This one is a species spotlight, and of course we're going to be starting with the California king snakes. We'll be going over things such as location, diet, habitat, temperament, lifespan, and any kind of fun facts or interesting information that we have about these guys. I'm starting with our sassiest, most temperamental king snake today. We have Phantasma here to start us off with this video, and I will probably be cycling through each of the other California king snakes as well. So without further ado, let's get started. So we're going to start with a description of California king snakes. So California king snakes have smooth or keeled scales, so you can kind of rub them in either direction. She's gonna be sassy. It's okay. You can rub them in either direction and it doesn't really catch on anything. They're very, very smooth and kind of soft to touch, actually. They're most commonly black and white, but they come in many different patterns. There is variation in their colors in the wild, but typically it's kind of like a black and white or like an off-white and brownish color. There are definitely more colors and patterns or morphs available in the pet trade than there are in nature. We can see a couple of them today in this video. Obviously, Phantasma is a high white California king snake, so she has a lot of white coloring to her and not a whole lot of that dark pattern. So you can kind of see down her back that all of that darkness is diffused, which is kind of what makes her a high white compared to our other two that we have for you today. These patterns are used to help camouflage them in the wild type patterns that is, and it camouflages them from their natural predators such as hawks or other birds, coyotes, foxes, anything that would want to eat them as an easy snack would have a harder time finding them, much like a zebra in the wild. So their color patterns work very, very similarly to that of a zebra. Now, with that being said about their natural predators, that brings us to their location. They're going to be in locations that you will often find hawks and coyotes and foxes. They're located in the western United States and northwestern Mexico, and they reside in several different habitats like grasslands, marshes, and deserts or semi-deserts. Their temperature ranges from about 70 degrees Fahrenheit or 21 degrees Celsius to about 85 degrees Fahrenheit or 29-ish degrees Celsius in the warmer parts of their climate zone. And they may actually choose to bask in areas that can be up to about 90 degrees Fahrenheit or 32 degrees Celsius should they feel like they need the extra sun to help digest or whatever it is that they plan on doing that day, as a snake does. And their humidity levels range from about 35% to 60%, depending on the temperature outside and the humidity outside. If it's rained a lot, if it's a dry season, it changes. But that extra humidity does help them shed in captivity. Since the area they're found can vary in the temperature, the humidity, etc., you can kind of find them at different points during the day, dependent on what the weather's like outside. So if it's exceptionally hot midsummer, they'll be more active during not the hottest point in the day. So you won't really see them around noon. You'll see them more in the morning, and then in the evening when the sun starts to go down, kind of cools off a little bit, so it's a more comfortable temperature. And then once the weather starts to actually cool down, you'll see them more in midday where they're getting those rays of sunshine, they're getting that extra warmth that they may need. Now that being said, in my last educational video I had mentioned that California king snakes are diurnal, meaning that they're more active in the daytime. But then I also saw information that says they're crepuscular, which means they're active at twilight hours. So I did some digging, did some more research, and I found that it seems the most accurate representation of what they are and how they act when they are active is calling them cathemeral, which basically means that they're active at irregular intervals throughout the day depending on their needs and what it's like outside. So they'll sleep for kind of shorter intervals throughout the day, and then they're awake when the weather's nice and they need to get some sun, or when it's not too hot so that they can do their hunting. So it really just depends on the day and what they are doing at that particular time. Alright, for the next part of this video, I have Persephone here to be my assistant. The next topic is lifespan and breeding. So the California king snake lifespan is kind of debated. The consensus that I saw is kind of 15 to 20-ish years in the wild and roughly 20 plus in captivity. So they're quite long-lived both in the wild and in captivity. Obviously in captivity they'll last a little bit longer. They're not fighting with nature to survive, so they tend to last a little bit longer that way, but they're very good in captivity. They don't, some species don't do well in captivity. These guys do very well in captivity. Females are able to breed from around the age of 3, and they can continue on into their teenage years before they'll kind of start to reduce the amount of eggs they have, and then eventually they'll just kind of stop, which means that they're past their breeding age. Females can lay between 5 to 12 eggs per clutch, roughly, it seems, with the average kind of being around 8 or 9 in most cases. And eggs will hatch between 40 to 65 up to 75 days after they are laid. Once California king snake babies hatch, they are entirely independent from either of their parents. The mother does not stick around the nest. She lays the eggs and off she goes. The male never stayed around in the first place. He may have actually gotten eaten in the process, so he's definitely not there. But the babies are fully able to hunt and fend for themselves by the time that they actually get out of the egg, provided that they make it that far. I didn't mention this in the description part, but they average from around 2 to 4 feet, with the females being larger. They are the ones who lay eggs, so they would need that extra size in order to make sure that they can lay eggs properly and still be healthy and survive after the fact. So the females tend to be larger. However, in our case, Prince is quite a big boy. You'll see when I pull him out for the next part of this video. Let's finish up with Persephone here by talking about temperament and diet. So they vary in temperament from docile to quite sassy. Some of them can be aggressive, others are just more fearful and try to get away, but it seems like quite often they're fairly calm. They just kind of slowly slither around, checking things out. They're very, very curious. So 2 of 3 of mine are quite calm, curious. You saw the first one, she's not the worst, she's just not as calm as these guys. Now, I don't know if that's because she's smaller or if that's just the way that she is, but overall they tend to be pretty good temperament-wise, with the occasional sassy individual. But they are very good eaters. They do have a high food drive, so when food is in question, they tend to be very active, very attentive, and they want that food, and they want it now. But other than that, once they're done and it's not feeding day and they know they're not being fed, this is basically what I can expect from mine, and I've heard many other people have the same experience. The typical diet of a California king snake is fairly varied. They often eat rodents, birds if they can catch them, lizards, or even other snakes. So that is kind of where the king in their name comes from. Any or most snakes that have king in their name typically signifies that they will eat other snakes if given the chance, including each other. So Mexican black king snakes, king cobras, anything like that, they are snake eaters. Related to their temperament, I did not have a favorite pet snake or favorite type of snake. At least I don't think that I did for a very long time. I thought I knew what I liked. You know, I've had ball pythons in the past. I had a carpet python. We have one now. I really, really love them. But I think that the king snakes, the California king snakes, are honestly my favorite type of snake at this point. With what they do, how they move, their faces are very, very cute. Their kind of stark difference between how they act when they're eating versus how they act any other time, and their willingness to just kind of explore and see what's going on. I really, really enjoy having these guys. So if you're ever considering one, be aware that they do have that severe or extreme feeding response, but they're so interesting to watch, and they're quite well behaved, they're well mannered for the most part. Overall, very, very good pet snake breed. If you consistently handle your pet snake, they will most likely kind of calm down a little bit if your snake tends to be a little skittish or on the spicy side, and that's just a product of them realizing you're not going to hurt them. There are genuinely some snakes who just maybe don't want to be held, but you can at least familiarize them with you. They're not so much tame as they are just used to it. If you do have a snake that is a little sassy or a little skittish, sometimes that's just how it works. That doesn't mean they're all like that. And with some practice, some time, and some patience, you can probably get them to at least relax a little when you hold them and know that you're not a danger to them, you're not going to hurt them. And it just takes time.
Alright, well, I'm gonna hold the mic because I have Prince here and he likes to hold onto my microphone. I've already recorded this once. The microphone was turned off at some point, so I don't actually know if there's viable footage from that part. So, Prince is here to help me talk about fun facts that relate to California king snakes. Both of these fun facts are related to their diet in some way. Number 1, California king snakes, relative to their size, are the strongest constrictors. So even though they're small, they can constrict very, very tightly. And this is because they often eat different reptiles, lizards, snakes, who don't really breathe the same way that rodents do. Snakes can hold their breath for a lot longer.
I had to develop the ability to constrict them tightly enough to stop them from breathing and actually kill them. Now, before we get to the second reason, or the second fun fact, it is important to remember the area that they come from. So they come from the western United States and northwestern Mexico, where they will oftentimes run into rattlesnakes. And being that they are a snake that eats other snakes, they have actually developed an immunity to rattlesnake venom. So because that is one of the things that they often choose to eat should they get the chance, it makes sense that they would be immune to it, since a rattlesnake's way of kind of defending itself and of hunting is venom. So, you know, snake eat snake world, they've developed a way to get around that so that they don't end up being the prey, and they actually are the ones that end up winning and eat the rattlesnakes. Which just goes back to the fact that they eat other snakes, which is crazy, and they're immune to rattlesnake venom. That's wild. I didn't even know that. Now I do, now you do too. So all in all, California king snakes are super interesting snakes. They make wonderful pets, they're very, very cool to watch, they're very interesting to learn about, and they've got a couple really cool adaptations that they've garnered from living their lives in the wild. As I said before, I'm pretty sure these are now my favorite type of snake, and I would never have expected that. I would have expected something, you know, like carpet pythons or like a boa constrictor or something like that, not a California king snake. But they've won me over. So with that being said, I'm gonna keep Prince's part of this video a little bit shorter, just because, again, he is starting to be in shed and I don't want to stress him out too much. He needs to kind of rest. You're gonna get a little bath to make sure that he's hydrated enough to shed when he needs to, and then hopefully I have a full shed from him. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching. It really means a lot to me to have supporters. I like the fact that I get to learn and then teach you as well. So thank you again, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
So they'll shake their tails like a rattlesnake. They try and act scary like a rattlesnake. There we go. So that's kind of their way of saying, hey, don't touch me. Let's see. There we go. So she's actually the only one I have that does this.